We'll start in 2 more minutes.
Good evening, everyone. I am Arvind, and I am the organizer of this event. I am a Alpha Microsoft Learn student ambassador and also a mentor for GirlScript Summer of Code and vice chair of IEEE. Today, we are here to teach you about a famous framework for machine learning called PyTorch. Uh, Basically, we'll today learn how to build machine learning models with PyTorch and learn the key concept used to build machine learning models, learn how to build a computer vision model, and build models with the PyTorch API. So, uh, and I have Neha as a co-host. Neha, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our workshop on Introduction to PyTorch. I'm Suryakamni Neha, and I'm a beta MLSA, HPR delegate, and also a speaker mentor at Women Tech Network. And I'm also a chapter lead at GirdScript Hyderabad and planning head at Honkers. I'll be giving a pinch on PyTorch about what is a PyTorch and what are key capabilities and the usage of PyTorch in the next 10 minutes, and we'll jump into the practical section. So without wasting time, let's get started. PyTorch. Actually, PyTorch is an open source deep learning framework that provides a seamless path from research to production. Many AI innovations are developed on PyTorch and quickly adopted by the industry. Microsoft uses PyTorch internally and actively contributes to development and maintenance of the PyTorch ecosystem. PyTorch and Azure are both together, making it easy to develop, train, and deploy machine learning models. Get started with PyTorch in Azure Machine Learning is a fully engaged service that helps you build and deploy models faster. Azure Data Science Virtual Machines, pre-configured for managing your own infrastructure, and Azure Functions, a serverless hosting environment. There are few key capabilities uh, where we see all the features of PyTorch. So production ready, it's completely tradition seamless between eager and graph modes with Torch script and accelerate the path production with Torch. It's used completely used for productions and whatever services you need for using PyTorch, it's also a production, it have a production ready feature so that it could give you a fast torch script. And a distributed training, like it's scalable. You can have a high performance optimization in research and production enabled by Torch. It's distributed backend, like let us for example just have an instance that one person is working on a project and he want to distribute it, like they want to connect it with multiple persons, and they want it using a distributive training. Then PyTorch is also capable of giving a distributed feature in it. A robust ecosystem. So basically, robust ecosystem means it will have a fast tool and libraries in PyTorch and supports the development in computer vision and NLP and more. Like it is fast, very productive, and also distributive. So it's robust because it's so fast. And cloud support, like PyTorch supports GCP, Microsoft Azure mainly, and it also supports AWS and a lot of cloud platforms frictionally for development and easy scaling. So tensors, actually, basically, w- we use these all features for the active contribution of like both PyTorch and Azure together will give us a vast machine learning models. So there are few Microsoft active contributors to ecosystem PyTorch, like few open source projects which were developed using PyTorch, like PyTorch, like Torch.onx. It's a Microsoft maintains a ONX export functionality in core PyTorch. PyTorch has built-in support with ONX that enables deploying models with high performance on multiple platforms. And we has coming to PyTorch Profiler. So basically, this Microsoft developed by PyTorch Profiler in collaboration with Facebook. So your team can easily find and remove performance bottlenecks in the models. And there is a like ONX runtime, where runtime for accelerated inferencing and training of PyTorch models supporting Windows, Mac, Linux, Android, and iOS, and optimized for variety of hardware accelerators. There's also called a thing called Deep Speed, where DeepSpeed is a library of algorithms for training a next generation large models, including a state of art model parallel training algorithms and other optimizations of distributed training. There's also a cute name called, Hummingbird, right? So even Hummingbird is used. It's a library that compiles traditional models like Skitlearn and Light GBM into PyTorch sensor computation for faster inference. So let me teach a very important algorithm used in PyTorch is tensors. Basically, uh, tensor is a specialized data structure that are very similar to arrays and matrices. So maybe in basic machine learning models, we using NumPy library, we use arrays and models in 2D and 3D dimension array. So in PyTorch, we use tensors to encode input and output of models as well as model parameters. Like they are similar to NumPy and arrays, except that tensors can run GPU on other hardware accelerators too. So there are three ways to use Azure for PyTorch development. Accelerating your workflow with Azure Machine Learning. That is, we build, train, and deploy PyTorch models with ease, enable productivity and collaboration using machine learning, workspaces, and familiar tools such as Jupyter Networks and VS Code. Azure Machine Learning removes a heavy lifting of end-to-end machine learning workflows while also handling housekeeping tasks such as data preparation and experiment tracking, which cuts time to production from weeks to hours. And also, second one, develop with pre-configured Azure Data Science virtual machines. So here, what it happens is like we go straight to the development with custom windows like Linux virtual machines, especially configured for machine learning workloads. Data science virtual machines come installed with PyTorch as well as the necessary GPU drivers and a comprehensive suite for other popular data science tools. Get a frictionless development experience out of the box and the ability to work with all the Azure hardware configurations, including GPUs. So we also go serverless with Azure functions. So here what it happens like it deploys lightweight models with the most efficient by utilizing low maintenance serverless hosting provided by Azure functions. So let me explain you a real-time product called AstraZeneca. AstraZeneca is a product developed by PyTorch framework. So AstraZeneca helps scientists comb through massive amounts of data in our quest to find the information we need to help us deliver life-changing medicines. Azure Machine Learning has compute capabilities that help the scale training as well as resource management. The PyTorch community then provides us with a various tools for fundamental research and training models. This allows us to build quickly and focus on the science. So for this product, Gavin Edwards, machine learning engineer, AstraGenera are the keywords where it was developed called as AstraGena. So now let's dive into the practical section where it will be proceeded with Arvind Chella. Arvind, please take the floor.
Yeah, is my screen visible?
Yeah, yes, it is.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, most machine learning workflows involve working with data, creating models, optimizing model parameters, and saving trained models. So we'll now go through a complete machine learning workflow implemented in PyTorch, a popular ML framework for Python. We'll use the Fashion MNIST dataset to train a neural network that predicts if a image belongs to either of the classes, like some classes like t-shirt, trouser, and all. So before we jump into building the model, we'll first learn a set of core concepts required to understand the basics of building machine learning models. Then in the last step, we'll put it all together. So yeah, what is actually a tensor? So tensor is a specialized data structure that is very similar to arrays and matrices. In PyTorch, we use tensors to encode the inputs and outputs of a model, and also as well as model's parameters. Tensors are similar to NumPy's ND arrays, except that tensors can run on GPUs or other hardware accelerators. In fact, tensors and NumPy arrays can often share the same underlying memory, eliminating the need to copy data. And also tensors can also be optimized for automatic differentiation. So if you are familiar with NDRS, then Tensor API will be easy to understand. So let's first set up our environment. First, we'll use matplotlib inline so that our output can be seen just after the line instead of in a new window. So yeah, then we'll set up our environment, importing PyTorch and NumPy. Then we'll initialize a tensor. Actually, uh, there are a lot of ways in which you can initialize a tensor. Like you can directly initialize a tensor from particular data. Like we are given some data like a two-dimensional matrix like this, 1, 2, 3, 4. We can directly using the package PyTorch, then this particular array, the matrix can be stored as a tensor in this X data. Like, see, this particular matrix is converted into a tensor now. So that's that's like we are initializing a tensor from a given data. We can also initialize a tensor from a NumPy array. Like we'll first from that NumPy array, we'll take that particular data and store into an array, and we'll initialize a tensor from that. Yeah, from an NP array, we are initializing a tensor. Also, we can also initialize a tensor from another tensor. Like we are this once-like method is basically it gives us a tensor with all values as one. So in the initial before we took x underscore data as 1 2 3 4. So here also the size or the shape of the tensor is retained. So we'll now get a 2 by 2 tensor with ones, and in the second step we are taking some random values. So we are getting some random values in the tensor. Now we can also initialize a tensor with random or constant values. Like here shape shape is a tuple of tensor dimensions. So in the functions here, it actually determines the dimensionality of the output tensor. We gave it 2 comma 3. So now we can observe a tensor with 3 columns and 2 rows. So this shape helps us to create to initialize a tensor with those number of columns and rows. So with constant and random values, we can initialize tensors in this way. Also, there are some things called as attributes of a tensor. Like tensor attributes describe their shape, data type, and the device on which they are stored. Like these tensors, you can find it that this device tensor is stored on CPU. So the device on which they are stored is also stored by using tensor.device method. Also, we can perform a lot of operations on tensors. Like we can move our tensor from a CPU to a GPU if available. So like we'll first check if there is a GPU available, and then using this over 100 tensor operations, including arithmetic, linear algebra, matrix manipulation, sampling, and more are we frequently use them. So each of these operations can be run on a GPU, like at a typically higher speeds than of a CPU. So by default, tensors are created on the CPU. We need to explicitly move tensors to the GPU using this dot to method. So after checking for GPU availability, we'll move our tensor to the GPU if it is available. So we have to keep in mind that copying large tensors across devices can be expensive in terms of time and also memory. And now coming to standard NumPy like indexing and slicing. So when we have a tensor, we can slice some particular column. Like here we are initializing a tensor of dimensions 4 by 4. So we can using just similar to NumPy indexing, we can just call tensor of 0 and get that uh, complete row. See, in the output we can find that complete row is coming. Also, in the similar way, we can find the first column. In the similar way, we can find last column. Now coming to slicing, we when working with tensors, during some situations, you will have to manipulate the tensor so that you have to work on basically do some operations. So when you want to slice some particular column like that, then we can just simply change the values of it like this. Like you can call the tensor, and of that give the index of that column and give the value you want to replace that column with. So in this way you can just slice a tensor. Now concatenating joining tensors. Basically using torch.cat, you can concatenate a sequence of tensors along a given dimension. And also another tensor joining operate that is subtly different from torch.cat. So now yeah, here we have this particular tensor. Now we are concatenating three of similar tensors, and we will be getting a output like this. Now we can perform a lot of arithmetic operations on tensors, and yeah, single element tensors. Like if you have one element tensor, for example, by aggregating all values of a tensor into one value. See, now tensor dot sum gives us the value of the entire sum of individual values of the tensor and is being stored in the variable aggregate. Now aggregate underscore item, we are giving storing that value of that aggregate in this aggregate underscore item. Like you can convert this into a Python numerical using this dot item method. So when this is called, this is becoming a number. So you can also see the type when we are running it. Yeah, it is becoming a Python numerical now. And we can also do in place operations, like you can directly add some new numerical to all the elements of the tensors. The initial tensor is this, and after calling the function like this add underscore, this is basically we use operations that store the result into the operand. These operations are called in place operations. So we denote them with a suffix underscore. So for example, if there is something like x dot copy underscore of y, then x is copied with the value of y. Similarly, uh, if x dot t underscore some value is given, so it will change the value of x. So this will add the value 5 to all the elements of this tensor. So one thing we have to keep in mind is in place operations save some memory, but can be problematic when computing derivatives because of an immediate loss of history. Hence, their use is discouraged. So bridge with NumPy. We can tensors on the CPU and NumPy arrays can share their underlying memory locations, and changing one will change the other. Like suppose we have this cell where our tensor is looking like this. So when we are adding 1 to the tensor, you can see the changes are reflected even in the NumPy array. Got it? Like they both are interrelated. So because tensors on the CPU and NumPy arrays can share their underlying memory locations. So changing any one will change the other. Similarly, NumPy array to tensor. Changing any of them will change the other. Now, another important concept when using PyTorch is datasets and data loaders. So yeah, generally code for processing data samples can get messy and hard to maintain. We ideally want our dataset code to be decoupled from our model training code for better readability and modularity. So PyTorch provides two data primitives. One is this torch.utils.data.dataset, and the other is torch.utils.data.data loader. So these two allow us to use preloaded datasets as well as our own data. So what this dataset does is it stores the samples and their corresponding labels. And what this data loader does is it basically wraps an iterable around the dataset to enable easy access to the samples. So, what PyTorch domain libraries provide is a number of preloaded datasets. Here we'll be using the fashion MNIST dataset. That subclass torch dot utils dot data dot dataset and implement functions specific to the particular data. They can be used to prototype and benchmark your model. You can find them. Now we want to load a data set. Here is an example of how to load the fashion MNIST data set. Yeah, fashion MNIST data set is a data set of Zalando's article images consisting of a 60,000 training examples and 10,000 test examples. Each example comprises a 28 by 28 grayscale image and an associated label from one of 10 classes, like the classes we discussed before, the t-shirt, trouser, and all. So now we load the fashion MNIST dataset using these following parameters: the root, train, download, and this transform. So root is basically the path where the train or test data is stored, and train is specifies training or test data set, and download equals to true. This basically downloads the data from the internet if it's not available at the root. And this transform equal target transform specifically basically specify the feature and the label transformations, which will be going through later. So now iterating and visualizing the data set, we can basically uh, index datasets manually like a Python list. Uh, like we can suppose we have a training data and we want to find some values of the training data. So we can index dataset manually like a list. Like suppose we have training underscore data, and we can call that index of that particular training data. And we can use matplotlib to visualize some samples in our training data. So yeah, what basically we are doing is we are iterating through our data set. Like we are finding for 3 by 3 3 columns and 3 rows. So 1 to our loop iterates over 1 to 10, and our sample index is randomly stored, and image comma label of that particular of that corresponding index is stored in this image comma label, and we'll add a subplot to it, and we'll finally give it the title and some axis. We are not actually giving an axis here, and we'll basically give it a label. Basically find the label of that training data set, not the testing data set. So after this is the way which we are actually taking the dataset from the PyTorch framework. Now here, when you want to create a custom dataset for your files, so a custom dataset class must implement three functions. The first function is this initialization function, and then other function is length, and the third one is get item. Now we just take a look at this implementation. The fashion MNIST images are stored in the directory image directory, and their labels are stored separately in a CSV file called annotations file. So we'll go through each one step by step, like the three functions. So basically the init function is run once when instantiating the dataset object. So we initialize the directory containing the images, the annotations file, and the both transforms. So then the length function returns the number of samples in our dataset, and this get item function loads and returns a sample from the dataset at the given index. At the given index, the function loads and returns a sample from the dataset, and depending upon the and based upon that index, it identifies the image's location on the disk and converts that to a tensor using this read image function. So after this, it retrieves the corresponding label from the CSV data in self.image labels and calls the transform functions on them. These transform functions are called upon them, and basically if they are applicable, and returns the tensor image and corresponding label in a Python dictionary. This is basically the Python dictionary, and that sample is being returned over here. So now preparing your data for training with data loaders. Basically, this dataset retrieves our dataset features and labels one sample at a time. So while training a model, we typically want to pass samples in mini batches, reshuffle the data at every epoch to reduce model overfitting, and use Python's multiprocessing to speed up data retrieval. So this data loader is an iterable that abstracts this complexity for us in an easy API. So this basically shows us that we typically want to pass the samples in mini batches. So now we are iterating through the data loader. We have loaded that dataset into the data loader, and now we can iterate through the dataset as needed. Each iteration below returns a batch of train features and train labels. Both contain a batch of 64 features and labels respectively. And because we specified shuffle equals to true over here, so this basically gives us our we can iterate over all batches the data is shuffled. So for finer grained control over the data, we have a look at this shuffle. So yeah, so this will be our output. Like our future batch shape is going to be a 64 bit, and our label of this particular image is 0, which is basically means it's a t-shirt. Now transforms are one other important part of machine learning. Like basically transforms in the no when we are working on a building a machine learning model, we have to the data does not always come in its final processed form, like that is required for our training machine learning algorithm. So we use transforms to perform some manipulation of the data and make it suitable for training. And all torch vision datasets have two parameters. One is the transform parameter, which is basically used to modify the features, and the target transform, which is basically used to modify the labels. So these accept variables containing the transformation logic, and this module offers several commonly used transforms out of the box. Like the dataset we are using, the fashion MAST has features that are PIL image format, and the labels are integers. Just like before, we saw for the output, that's a t-shirt, the label value is 0, which is basically an integer. So the labels are integers. So for training, we need the features as normalized tensors. So we need the features as normalized tensors and the labels as one hot encoded tensor. So to make these transformations, we'll basically use the two tensor and the lambda transformations. So what the two tensor basically does is uh, it basically converts a PIL image or NumPy ND array into a float tensor. It converts it into a float tensor and then scales the images pixel intensity values in the range of 0 to 1. After after this, we'll use a lambda transform. The lambda transform apply on any user defined lambda function. Here we define a function to turn the integer into a one hot encoded tensor. So it first creates a zero tensor of size 10, and the number of labels in our dataset, basically the size 10 is basically the number of labels in our dataset, and we call it using scatter, which assigns a value 1 on the index as given by the label. So this transformation helps us for the labeling of the data. Now building the models and other things will be covered by Neha.
Thank you, Arvind. I'll continue with building the neural networks. Let me present my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah, okay. So now let us continue with building model layer. So basically here, we'll first install the matplotlib inline and import the related neural network comprised layers modules that perform operations on data. So the torch.nn is a namespace here. So where it provides all the building blocks you need to build own neural network. Every module in PyTorch subclasses the NN module. A neural network is a module itself that consists other module layers. This nested structure allows the building and managing complex architectures easily. So in the following cell, we'll build a neural network classifying images into a fashion MNIST dataset. So here, let us get a hardware device for training. We want to be able to train a model on a hardware accelerator like GPU if it's available. Let's check if its torch of CUDA is available, else we'll continue with the CPU. So in this cell, here we defined a class where our neural network by
There might be some internet issue. Neha will join within a minute.
Okay, okay.
Sorry, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Sorry, there was a technical issue. Could you able to see my screen now?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So let me resume with here we have created a neural network. Well, we define our neural network by subclassing nn dot module and initialize the neural network layers in hyphen init hyphen. So it will look like this. This basically. Every nn dot module subclass implements an operations on input data in a forward method. So now let's run the cell. And later, we'll create an interface with neural network and move this into the device and print its structure. Yes. So later, to use a model, we pass the input data. This executes the model forward along with some background operation. Do not call model.forward directly. Call the model on the input returns a 10-dimensional tensor with raw protected values for each class. We get a prediction densities by passing it through an instance of the nn.softmax module. Uh, yes, so let's run this cell. So here we predicted a class where its tensor 4 and device CUDA is to 0. So through model layers, let's break the layers into a fashion MNISed model. To illustrate it, we will take a sample min batch of 3 images of size 28 into 28 as I've mentioned it in the attributes and see what happens if we pass through this network. So yeah, the sizes are fixed. And now here, let me explain about nn.flatten. So nn.flatten is an attribute where the layer will convert it into 2D 28 into 28 image into a contiguous array of 784 pixel values, where it's a mini batch dimension at dim is equals to 0. That is dimension where dim is referred as dimension is maintained. Yeah, so now tot size is set into 3 comma 784. Enough. Let's now let me explain about nn dot linear attribute. So this is a linear layer is a module that output using its stored weights and biases. Sorry for the inconvenience. Let me continue with the NN layer again. So basically, the linear layer is a module that applies a linear transformation onto the input using its stored weights and biases. So later, let me run this. It's cute. Just Arvind, once can you assure me is my video and audio or
Yeah.
visible? Yes, yeah. Okay. So yes, so sorry, there was an NN issue. So I've restarted the Jupyter kernel. So now let me explain you about the NN dot RU, RELU. So this is basically a non-linear activation that what creates a complex mapping between the model inputs and outputs. They are applied after linear transformation to introduce non-linearity, helping neural network learn to a wide variety of phenomena. So we use NN.RELU between our linear layers, but there's other activation to introduce non-linearity in our model. Yeah, so we predicted few values before RENLU and after RENLU. So now we'll also use NN.sequential. So this neural network is an ordered container of modules, and the data is passed through all the modules in the same order as defined. You can use sequential containers to put together a quick network like sequential hyphen modules. So where we have initialized that here and then dot softmax. So this is used as a last linear layer of a neural network returns, which is logits, logits, raw values in hyphen infinity and infinity, having attributes like that, which are passed to the NN softmax module. The logics are scaled to values of 0, 1, representing models predicted densities for each class. DIM, like the dimension parameter, indicates dimension along with the value must sum to 1. So now model parameters. So basically many layers inside a neural network are parameterized. That is associated with weights and biases that are optimized during training. Subclassing NN.module automatically tracks all the fields defining inside our model object, and that makes all parameters accessible using your model parameters, braces or named parameters methods like named and size of the parameters here. So in this example, we will iterate over each parameter and print its size and preview its values. So here it have given the features, out features, bias if it's true or not, and each size parameters also. So now let's dive into the automation differentiation. So automation differentiation, which torch.autograd. When training a neural network, the most frequently used algorithm is backpropagation. In this algorithm, parameters are adjusted according to the gradient of loss function with respect to the given parameter. To compute those gradients, PyTorch is a built-in differentiation engine called torch.autograd. It supports automatic computation of gradient for any computational graph. Consider the simplest neural network with XWB and some loose function. It can be defined in PyTorch in the following manner like this. So now let's run this. And now let me explain about tensor functions and computation graph. So basically here in this network, W and B are parameters which we need to optimize. Thus, we need to able to compute with the gradients of loss function with respect to those variables. In order to do that, we set requires hyphen grad property for tensors. So let me note you that if you can set a value requires hyphen grad when creating a tensor or later using x dot requires grad, then this method can be used. So a function that can apply to tensors to construct computational graph is an fact of object of a class function. The object knows how to compute the function in a forward direction and also how to compute its directed during the backward propagation. A reference to the backward propagation, like a reference to the backward propagation is stored in a grad.fn property of a tensor. You can find more about the function and the further explanation of the code. So now let's print the gradient function and how it goes. So yeah, so the gradient function for Z is it's a backward propagation and it's also a binary cross entropy for loss function. So computing gradients to optimize the weights of parameters in a neural network, we need to compute the derivatives of our loss function with respect to parameters. Namely, we need sigma loss by sigma W and sigma loss by sigma B under some fixed values of X and Y. To compute these derivatives, we call loss dot backward attribute, this one. And to retrieve the values, we'll use W dot grad and B dot grad. And let's compile this and see. So yeah, so that we'll get a few fixed values of the tensors. And now let me note you that we can only obtain a grad propagations to the leaf nodes of computational graph which have required grad dot hyphen property to set it true. For all the nodes in our graph, gradients will not be available. In addition, to be available, we can only perform gradient calculation using backward ones on a given graph for performance reasons. If we need a several backward calls on the same graph, we need to pass retrain hyphen graph is equals to true to the backward call. So disabling a gradient tracking. So by default, all the tracers with required.grad is equals to true. It's by default. All are tracking to the computational history and the support gradient computation. However, there are some cases where we do or do not do that. For example, if we have trained the model and just want to apply it for some input data, we only want to do forward computation through the network, we can stop tracking computations by surrounding our computation code with torch.no-grad block. And now let's see which one is by default true and false. So as I mentioned, the torch for here requires.grad is true, and for no grad, it's false. So another way to achieve the same result is detach. So on this method using the tensor. And now there are some reason that you might want to disable gradient tracking to mark some parameters to the neural network at frozen parameters. This is a very common scenario for fine tuning of pre-trained network to speed up the computation when are the only forward pass, because computations on tensors that we do track gradients would be more efficient. So Moron computational graph, conceptually, AutoGrad keeps a record of data and all executed operations along with the resulting new tensors in a directed acycling graph. As you know, a cycling graph, like it's a graph where it doesn't meet with another two ends. So in this DAG, like acyclic graph is also called as DAG, leaves in an input tensor routes to the output tensor. By tracing the graph from roots to leaves, you can also automatically compute gradients using a chain rule. In forward pass, AutoGrad have two things simultaneously: run the requested operation to compute the resulting tensor and to maintain the operation gradient function to the DAG. So basically, a backward pass kickoff when we use dot backward attribute is called on a DAG route. AutoGrad then computes the gradients from dot grad fn, like dot graph f hyphen fn, and later we'll use only dot grad which accumulates in the respective tensor attribute, and using the chain rule propagates all the way for leaf tensor. So DAG are dynamic in PyTorch, and an important thing is note is that a graph is recreated from scratch after using dot backward attribute. An AutoGrad starts populating a new graph. This exactly what allows you to use control flow states in your model. You can change the shape, size, operations at every iteration if needed. And now let me explain of your optional reading of tensors and gradients of Jacobian products. It's completely mathematical statements. But let me tell you a little bit, like in many cases, we have a scalar loss function and we need to compute a different gradient with respect to some parameters. However, there are cases when output function is an arbitrary tensor. In this case, PyTorch allows you to compute so-called Jacobian product and not to the actual gradient. So instead of computing the Jacobian matrix itself, PyTorch allows you to compute Jacobian product, which is represented had v to the power of t dot j are the input vector, and where we'll be having v is equal to v1, v2, and so on up till vn. So basically, this is achieved by calling backward with b has a argument. The size of v should be same as the size of original tensor with the respective to uh, which we want to compute the product. So now let's do the first call, second call, and calling after zeroing gradient tensors using this few lines of code and see how it is. So the tensor fixed values after first call, after second call, and after call after using few zero gradient tensors. And now let's continue with learning the optimization loop. So basically, let us now install Hasprior Matplotlib line. Yeah. So now, see, optimizing our model parameters. We have a model and a data. It's time to train, validate, and test our model by optimizing its parameters on our data. Training a model is an iterative process. In each iteration, which is called as epoch, the model makes a guess about the output, calculates the error in its guess like loss, and then calculates the error and collects its derivatives of the error with respect to its parameters, as we saw in the given prior modules, and as we also optimize these parameters using gradient descent. For more work through the process, I have explained through the backward propagation in the prior few of codes. So has Arvind already explained the data loaders and models. So we'll be using the train data and testing data. So yeah, so I've downloaded the required imports, and so for setting hyperparameters are adjustable parameters that let you control the model optimization process. Different hyperparameter values can impact model training and configuring rates. So if we define the number of epochs, the number of times it iterate over the data set, and the batch size, the number of data samples seen by the model in each uh, epoch, and the learning rate, where learning rate is how much the update models parameters can each batch epoch. Smaller values yield slow learning speed, while the larger values may result in unpredictable behavior during the training. So first here, once we set our hyperparameters, we can then train and optimize our model with an optimization loop. Each iteration of the optimization loop is called as epoch, as I have said you prior, and each epoch consists of main two parts: the train loop and the validation test loop. So the train loop iterate the following training dataset and try to converge it into the optimal parameters, and the test loop is like it iterate overall the test data set to check if the model performance is improving or not. So now let add a loose function for it, like cross entropy loose attribute. When presented with some training data, our untrained network is likely not to give the correct answer. Loose function measures the degree of dissimilarity of obtaining a result to the target value, and it is a loose function that we want to minimize during the training. To calculate the loose training, we make on production using an inputs of a given data sample and compare it against the true data label. So we use the model output nn dot cross entropy loose, which will normalize the logics and compute the prediction error. And now to optimization pass, like we use an optimizer, where it's a process of adjusting model parameters to reduce the model error in each training step. Optimization algorithm define how the process is performed. All optimization logic can be encapsulated using the optimizer, where here we see SDG optimization additionally available in PyTorch, such as Adam and RMS prop, that work better with different kind of models. So we initialize the optimizer by registering the model parameters that we need to be trained and passing it through the learning rate of hyperparameter. And now let's here will inside the training loop will optimize happens in three steps, like call optimizer zero grad, um yeah, optimizer zero grad, loose dot backward, and optimizer dot step, where we will define the train loop, this train loop for loops over our optimization code, and test loop that evaluates the model performance against our test data. And these three are used additionally where for the backend propagation, where optimizer zero grad is used for to gradients the model parameter. Gradients are by default add up to prevent double counting. We explicitly zero them with each iteration. And loose backward, this is because it loose with the call to loose dot backward, and PyTorch deposits the gradients with the loss with respect to each parameter. And then optimizer step. So the once we call our gradients, we call optimizer dot step to adjust the parameters. Um, to adjust the parameter with the related modules, and check whether it like matches with the related tensor values or not. Now let's compile this. Yeah. So later, now let's dive into the loose function initialization. So we initialize a loose function and optimizer to pass it to train loop and test loop. So we'll to increase the number of epochs to track the model, improving the performance. So yeah, for the each epoch, there's a different values of the loose function. So you may notice that the model is initially not very good, but it's okay trying to run loops of more epochs and adjusting the learning rate to the bigger number. It might be the case that the model configuring we choose might not be optimal, the one for the kind problem. Later courses will delve more into model shapes that work for vision problems. This goes on until the multiple epochs. So now let's dive into saving and loading the model predictions. As prior, we will just install the inline matplotlib. And so in this, we'll persist model state with saving, loading, and running the model predictions. So saving and loading weights, PyTorch model stores with learning parameters in an internal state dictionary called as state.dict, where it is used here. These can be persisted via torch.save, this one method. So let's compile this. Sorry, let me once again do this. Yes. So to Yeah, so it's successfully downloaded. To load the model base, you need to create an instance of same model first. An instance of same model will load the parameters using load state.dict here. It's used here method. So let's run this. Let me note that before calling model.eval method, before inferenting to set the dropout and batch normalization layers to evaluate the model, failing to do is the inconsistent inference results. So now to save the models with shapes here. So we can load model weights. We needed to instantiate the model class first because class defines the structure of a network. We might want to save the structure of this class together with the model, in which case we can pass model.state.dict has have like explained prior, and we'll initialize the data VGG model, which like have data related to trouser, t-shirts and all, and save it. We can then load the model like this. And then we'll export the model into ONX. So here I'll use the PyTorch can also have a native ONNX export support. Given dynamic nature of the PyTorch execution graph, however, the export process must traverse the execution graph to produce a persistence ONX model. For this test variable, appropriate size should be passed into the export routine. In our case, we will create a dummy zero tensor for a correct size and execute. So there are a lot of things that you can do with ONX model, including running interface and different like different platforms and different programming languages. So now let's dive into the next module. So now let's build a full-on process. Sorry. So now let's build a full-on process. So working with the data, PyTorch have two primitives work like torch utils data and torch utils data with datas and data sets, and also from corresponding data labels like data loader and data set around. So I have installed all the required PyTorch primitives. So PyTorch offers domain. So PyTorch offers few domain libraries such as Torch Text, Torch Vision, and Torch Audio. All of the include datasets. So for Torch Vision dot datasets, here. So for Torch Vision data sets, this module contains objects of many real world vision like CIFAR, COCO. So Fashion MINS dataset, every Torch Vision dataset includes two arguments, transform and target transform. To modify samples and labels respectively. So here we'll download the training from open datasets. So now um, for the full on model progress, we will pass a dataset argument here. We'll pass a dataset argument to the data loader. This wraps up the iterable over our dataset and supports automatic batching, sampling, shuffling, and multi-process data loading. Here we define a batch size of 64. That is element of data loader. Iterable will return a batch of 64 features and labels. And let's now acquire shape of X, shape of Y, torch size, where it initialized. And let's create few modules to define the neural network in PyTorch. We have to create a class to inherit an NN dot module. So for that, we'll define the layers of network in, as I have said before, hyphen dot int, where function will specify how the data will pass through the network in the forward function. And to accelerate the operation in the neural network, we'll move to GPU if available or not. Let's check it. So yeah, so it's available and the neural network is flattened. So using a CUDA device also and using sequential, linear, and its optimized features. So to optimize its parameter, to train the model, we need a loose function and an optimizer. So now let's use this. And then a single training loop. The model makes predictions on the training data set and the backprop against the prediction error and adjust the model parameters. So now let's train according to the back parameters I have explained prior for the full on progress. And now let's test it. We can also check the model performance against the testing the data to ensure the learning using the same test loose functions. And then the training process is conducted over several iterations during whole epoch, as I've said before. The model learns parameters to make better predictions. We print the model accuracy and loss of each epoch. We like to see this accuracy increase and loss decreases with the each epoch. And now let me execute it. So it's a dynamic execution. So here we will find the accuracy will initially not be very good, as I've said before, and running the loop for more epochs and adjusting learning rate to the bigger number. It might also have the case model configuration, and we choose might not be optimal one in a kind of this problem, and the model shapes that network with vision problems. And now let's save the models. For saving the models, and a common way to save a model is to serialize the internal state dictionary containing a model parameters. And now to load the models, the process of loading the process of loading a model include recreating the model structure and loading the state dictionary onto it. So it's still going on. Let's wait until it gets completed. It's all the epochs. Maybe it takes few time. Let's wait for it. Uh, so yeah, so for the saving and loading, it takes few time. So yeah. So here all the PyTorch model is state to saved, and automatically all keys are matched successfully. And now so for that, uh, let's now the model can be used for making predictions also. So I have initialized a few classes like it was in the data set, few t-shirts, trousers, dress code, sandal, shirt, and all. And these are predicted, and here I have given a predictor has ankle boot. And let's see if it goes on with it. So yeah, so the predicted is sandal, but actually it's an ankle boot. So the maximum a torch is saved, and it predicts as if it's it troubleshoots whenever the need a worker, but optimally it gives us the output. So now I've covered all, so we have covered all the concepts for building machine learning models and implementing those concepts with PyTorch. And we will we built a PyTorch model using neural network that could classify t-shirt, top, trousers, pullover, dress, coat, sandal, shirt, sneaker, and a bag and an ankle boot. And like now, we will have also covered few machine learning concepts. Keep working on few more machine learning concepts using PyTorch, and you can just whenever you want to use the tool PyTorch, you can just Google it and start learning free PyTorch. So it have a lot of advantages, a lot of communities you can join and collaboratively learn about PyTorch. There are many like communities where like Salesforce, Stanford University, and Udacity are in collaborative with PyTorch. So start learning free and get productive. If you guys have any
Also, if
doubts,
you are interested, you can also go through the documentation provided in the Microsoft Learn. That's really great, like the learning paths and all. Yeah. Mm,
so that's it. If you have any doubts, you can just unmute yourself and ask us.
Maybe we can wind up.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us today. It was really great having a great section using telling and about all about the basics related to PyTorch. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us and making the event successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.